Over the last 20 years, again, the use of the word or idea has made a resurgence in our culture. There are countless self-help books available to tell us we need to have faith. But it's not faith in God all the time. In fact, most of the time it's faith in yourself, or how to develop faith in yourself, or faith in this, or how to have faith in that. I saw a quote, I'll read it to you, defining what faith is. Faith is raising the sail of our little boat until it is caught up in the soft winds above and picks up speed, not from anything within ourselves, but from the vast resources of the universe around us. Yay! That's the majority, even people within the church are reading this kind of garbage. It's the truth. And the basic fundamentals of faith, we just don't know. D.L. Moody said this years ago: real true faith is men's weakness and weaknesses leaning on God's strength. And I think that's powerful. Chuck Smith said this: without a vibrant faith, the Christian life soon becomes tedious, burdensome, and discouraging instead of being marked by joy, peace, hope, and power as God means it to be. And we all say amen, because we've all been there. Where you at? I'm doing all right. How you been? I'm okay. What's going on? I've been going through some stuff, right? And you can just see the weight and the heaviness where you're trying to carry it, And I do. I find myself, going 4 or 5 days or a week, and I'm just, Lord, okay, I'm trying to carry this, and I know I'm a fool, and I'm not having any faith in you. I'm not turning this over to you, right? I've lost my joy, my peace. I'm losing hope. I'm not walking in the power God desired me to walk in. Paul said in Romans 13, he says, now may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing. That's faith. That you may abound in hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. Faith in God, believing. There has been so much wrongly said about faith. I mean, from a movement that just doesn't go away, this whole, name it and claim it, wealth, health, and prosperity doctrine, and they just absolutely destroy the whole idea of faith, really. And they just weaken the body of Christ and what it really means to trust and walk with the Lord. Faith is founded upon believing. And if it is saving grace that we're talking about, then it is founded on the gospel of grace, as I taught last week. If we're going to get into an airplane, well then, we need to have faith that it will stay in the air until we've reached the place where we can land safely. I call that common faith. Amen? I had a friend years ago, a contractor, a good friend of mine. He had a helicopter and in Corona, and he wanted to take me for a ride. And he had a golf cart, and it was up on this platform with wheels. And we pulled it out of the hangar and out into this grass area. And he kind of scared me for a little bit. He took like 20 minutes. He's running his hands on the wings. He's checking all these different objects and jiggling things. And I'm like, wait, time out. Is there are you not confident in this craft area? I mean, you're kind of scaring me. He said, no. I do this every time. You have to do this every time you get in it. And I just kind of made me feel I wasn't full of faith for a moment there. But anyway, there's common faith. And then there is foolish faith. Foolish faith. On July 2nd, 1982, Larry Walters attached 43 balloons to a lawn chair, filled them with helium, put on a parachute, strapped himself to his lawn chair, in the backyard of his home in San Pedro, California. He took a pellet gun, a CB radio, sandwiches, beer, and a camera. When the cord that tied his lawn chair to his Jeep broke prematurely, Larry Walters' lawn chair rose rapidly to a height of 16,000 feet. He was spotted by 2 commercial airliners. He slowly drifted over Long Beach Airport. After 45 minutes in the sky, Walters shot several balloons, taking care not to unbalance the load. He then accidentally dropped his pellet gun. He descended slowly until the balloons dangling caught on cables and a power line. Cables that got caught on a power line. The power line broke, causing a 20-minute electricity blackout. He landed unharmed on the ground. Walters was immediately arrested by awaiting members of the Long Beach Police Department. And that's a true story. Talk about foolish faith. What was that guy thinking? I had read that story years ago. My stomach, 16,000 feet in the air in a lawn chair with a six-pack and sandwiches. I hope he had drank a six-pack before he took off. My stomach, I would have broke the handles on the lawn chair. Ah! Yeah. Oh my gosh, could you imagine? Foolish faith. And then there is true faith. Biblical faith is believing or trusting in God's sovereign work in redemption. It means trusting that He is on the throne, that He's in command of all things and working through every circumstance that comes our way. When we have that kind of faith, we find peace in times of trials. But when we lose sight of God's sovereignty and His power, we begin to cling to our own strength, right? We begin to look to our own resources and attempt to handle difficulties aside from faith in God. Hebrews 11:6 says, "But without faith, it's impossible to please Him. For he who comes to God must believe that He is, comma." This verse doesn't tell you what He is. It assumes that you have to believe that He is what He is. And that He is a rewarder of those who diligently seek Him. That's a reference to obedience, isn't it? That He is our Savior, that He is the Messiah, that He is King Jesus. That statement, that verse in Hebrews 11:6, it reminded me of how important the Apostles' Creed is. Some of us who grew up in church might have had to memorize it. I wasn't that guy. Didn't grow up in church. But this is what it says. The Apostles' Creed says, "I believe in God the Father, Almighty Creator of heaven and earth, and in Jesus Christ, His only Son, who was conceived by the Holy Spirit, born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, died, and was buried, and descended into hell. The third day, He rose again from the dead and ascended into heaven. He sits at the right hand of God the Father, Almighty. From hence He shall come to judge the living and the dead." That's a relevant copy of the Apostles' Creed. We must believe that He is, and therefore walk in obedience and diligently seek Him. Faith in action. Habakkuk 2:4 says, "Behold the proud. His soul is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith." Justified. Now last week, I stretched it out. I wanted to make the importance on grace, unmerited favor with God. I said you are not saved by faith. You're saved by grace. You got to understand the extension of God's grace comes from His work of grace. I have unmerited favor because of his life, death, resurrection, and ascension. That is the very center of grace. I know grace because of what God has done for me that I could not do for myself. And I have faith right in that. I'll move on and talk more about it. We are saved by grace through faith, as Ephesians 2, 8, and 9 talks about. God's grace was the act of our saving. I get concerned that many are confused because faith can mean so many different things to people. If when somebody says, I'm saved by faith, that's not a wrong statement, but it could be a wrong statement. Faith in what? Many times. And so their life and their obedience sheds light on what direction they're going. It is faith in the redemptive work of Jesus Christ that is necessary. Salvation is a gift, pure and simple. We cannot earn it, nor do we deserve it. Therefore, because it is a gift, we receive it only through faith in Jesus. That's where you find grace. But faith wasn't the action that saved or redeemed humanity. The move of God that opened up the door of redemption was the cross, right? I mean, we go back to the work of Christ. That's why Paul made it a point that he preached a gospel of grace, right? Because you see, even in Paul's time, the first century church had all kinds of doctrine. You could have faith in all kinds of pagan gods and all kinds of things, works and all of these things. Back to Ephesians, we don't have to look at it. Ephesians 2, you can take a note. 8 and 9, we were there last week. Through faith, right? We put our faith, our believing in the work of Jesus, which is the grace of God for me. All their graces stem from that work of grace. Now, if you've got your Bibles, please turn to Matthew 8:5. Matthew 8:5. We're going to be in 8 and 9 a little bit tonight. I love this. Matthew 8:5. Oops. We have a story here, an event, if you would. I like to call it an event. A story makes it sound like it's just a story. I don't know if it's true or not. No, it's an actual event took place here where Jesus heals this Gentile Roman centurion's servant. Now, I love this man. God had to have just seen. Here he is, a Roman Gentile. He's a centurion, a man of power and authority. He even says so in the thing here. And he comes to a Jewish rabbi, teacher, healer, right? And he comes on the basis of a servant of his. This tells you a lot about this man, the kind of heart this guy had, right? And so he pleads with Jesus, Lord, verse 6, my servant is lying at home, paralyzed, dreadfully tormented. Jesus said to him, I will come and heal him. The centurion answered, Lord, I'm not worthy that you should come under my roof. True sense of humility here. Wasn't like he was just didn't want to trouble Jesus. You know, it wasn't like true humility. I'm not worthy. This is how high he had Jesus up, lifted up. But only speak the word. Now, what on earth would give this Roman centurion that kind of faith? You just speak the word. Do you think that reality hit him that I'm going to go and I'm going to plead with the creator of the universe who spoke everything into existence? I don't think he had that kind of intellect. I don't think he had that kind of revelation. But it appears that he did. What a picture of faith. What a picture of faith. Speak the word and my servant will be healed. Wow. What an example. Verse 9. He goes on, for I also am a man under authority. He says, having soldiers under me. I say to this one, go, and he goes. And to another, come, and he comes. And to my servant, do this, and he does it. Jesus heard that, and he marveled. Again, this guy had a revelation of Jesus. He had some kind of concept that Jesus had authority like nobody else had. Now, when you're praying and you're seeking God, for something, do you have that kind of revelation? I mean, the Word has told us far more than that. The Word declares those statements to be true and then some. And yet we struggle to have this kind of faith. But Jesus, he marvels at this centurion, this Gentile. He goes and says to those following him, assuredly I say to you, I haven't found such great faith, not even in Israel. I say to you that many will come from the east and the west and sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of God. That statement in verse 11 is Jesus saying prophetically, Gentiles like this Gentile are going to come into the fold, into the kingdom, and they will sit down with the patriarchs. But 12 is a low note, if 11 is a high note. But the sons of the kingdom, speaking to the Israelites, Jews, those with a Pharisaical mindset, so to speak, they will be cast into outer darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Sad to say, some won't have this kind of simple faith. They'll appear to be religious. They'll even say they know God. They might even appear to know more about God. Right? Surely if there was a Pharisee standing by, or even the disciples could buck up and challenge this Gentile centurion to his doctrine. Let's have a little debate on doctrine, right? And they would wax the poor guy. But in reality, when it comes to having faith that caused Jesus to just marvel, we see something different. Jesus ended up telling the centurion in 13, go your way. And as you have believed, or because of your faith, so let it be done for you. You're right. I don't have to go to your house. I'm reading a book, and I've said it, some of you have been in staff meeting, but Chuck wrote a book, The Effective Prayer Life. And he reminded me, I think it was in the second chapter, he said, you got to realize for God, delivering you, Kim, from a headache and delivering somebody from cancer, one's not any harder for God. We pray like it is, Oh, Lord, touch Dean's headache, Oh, Lord, please. And I get down on my knees and I shake and my voice goes up and down and and I'm looking for scripture and as if I'm trying to, really get God's attention. He hears every prayer. He hears every cry of his children. And nothing's too hard for God. Nothing's impossible for the Lord. There's another event. Look at Matthew 8:23 through 27. Flip your page. Peter, this is a short little, Matthew covers this little one. This is when Jesus comes to walking with them, he's asleep in the boat, on this particular event. He's not walking to them on the water. Now, when he got into the boat, his disciples followed him. Suddenly a great tempest arose on the sea, a storm, right? A storm arose out of nowhere, like they do in your life and my life, so that the boat was covered with the waves. The boat's filling up with water. They're getting all wet. But he was asleep, Jesus. Then his disciples came to him, woke him up saying, Lord, save us. We're perishing. But he said to them, why are you fearful, O you of little faith? I'm sure he said that in a perfect, calm voice, aren't you? While they're screaming, Jesus is calm. Jesus arose and he rebuked the wind and the sea, and there was a great calm. So the men marveled, same word as the last event, saying, who can this be that even the wind and the sea obey him? I want to stop and say this. Faith is so important to have a walk of God and a faithful walk of God, because it's here that you're really growing, and it's here that you're really experiencing God, and God's actively moving in your life, and you're building a testimony. The less faithful you are, the less you're going to experience God. The more you and I, we cry out, we turn to God, we surrender it to God, we depend upon God, right? We have this, with this strong faith, God, you're going to come through, right? God comes through. And then he comes through again and again and again. And you have a life testimony. After a few years of walking with Jesus, you're like, let me tell you about my Jesus, right? When somebody's going through something, wait a minute. Let me tell you what God did for me this last year, right? And man, does that not just encourage somebody in their faith? What a testimony. But you know what? If you choose to be faithless, you won't have a testimony. You won't have a story. Let me tell you about what God did for me. Those great things in your mind that are going through your mind, where God delivered you and God met your need and provided and healed and did what he did, and you know it was just God, and you prayed and he worked. Those are memories you'll never forget. Those are times that just reinforce your faith in God. And so here, with this story, with this event, Jesus is just sleeping. A life-threatening storm sweeps up while Jesus appears to be asleep. How many times does our storms catch us off guard? They do. The storm caught the disciples off guard, but it didn't catch Jesus off guard. I think they thought it did. Why is he sleeping? Because he needed some rest. Wow. They wake him up. They're rebuked. Why are you fearful, O you of little faith? What if the disciple, had the same faith as the centurion did? You know, Lord, I know you have authority over everything. And if you could just command this storm to stop, that would be great. Jesus would have just rolled over and just put his arm up. Then went back to sleep. But they didn't do that. They had the creator of the sea and the wind and the boat with them, and yet fear held them hostage, and faith was nowhere to be found. Listen, the strength of the believer is always related to his or her faith in God. Always. Romans 15:5. Jesus said, I am the vine, and you are the branches. He who abides in me, and I in him, bears much fruit. For without me, you can do nothing. Our strength is always related to our faith in God. Turn with me to Hebrews 11. You know it well. Hebrews 11:1. Faith is the evidence of things not seen. Faith is the evidence of things not seen. Isn't it believing God to keep his word? If you're going to keep his word, if you're going to walk in obedience, it requires faith. Faith in his word. doesn't it? Even when in the moment there is no evidence, there can still be faith. Faith in the promises of God. And that is sufficient. That is sufficient. Because genuine faith expects God to save, expects God to heal, and expects God to deliver. Genuine faith. If we look at verse 3 of Hebrews 11, it says, "For through faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God." By faith, we as believers hold to the work of a creator. By faith. Do you think that to me, it's no surprise that creation is constantly under attack, right? Why? And they'll come and dispute with you, the believer, the faithful follower of Jesus, over creation. You know why the enemy keeps bringing you back to creation? It's because if I can discount creation, then I can discount your faith in God. If I can, and the enemy, I'm sure, has derailed thousands and thousands. You know, I suppose I don't hold to the gap theory or the old earth theory or any of those other goofy doctrines. I take the word of God literal. Okay? Literal. Now, I suppose he could have done it, and he's God, right? He lives outside of time and space. He can do whatever he wants. But my Bible is pinned in such a way that he created it in a literal 6 days. And so that's how I'm going to preach it, and that's what I'm going to believe that he did. And I always tell the person that wants to argue with me, what, you don't think that he could have created it in a mature state? Well, of course he did. He created it in a mature state. Well, be a rocket scientist to know that. Adam wasn't a baby. He was a grown man. I don't know. Pretty simple guy. But moving through, look how the author of Hebrews uses all the examples of faithful saints, though, in this chapter. Look at this. By faith, as we go on down through here, by faith, Abel offered to God in verse 4 a more excellent sacrifice than Cain. By faith, Enoch was taken away so that he did not see death. By faith, Noah, being divinely warned of things not yet seen, moved with godly fear, he prepared an ark. By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he would receive as an inheritance. By faith, he dwelt in that land, the land of promise. By faith, Sarah herself also received strength to conceive, right, seed in her old age. I mean, we can just go by faith, by faith, by faith, by faith. 23, Moses, when he was born, was hidden 3 months by his parents. By faith, Moses, when he became of age, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. By faith, he forsook Egypt. By faith, he kept the Passover and the sprinkling of blood. By faith, they passed through the Red Sea. Just by faith. What's your story? What's your story? By faith, Roger. By faith, Roger. By faith, Roger. What's your story? What are you doing by faith? What is it in your life that's being accomplished by faith? You have to ask yourself that. You're a child of God. You're a child of the faithful one. Right? The Alpha and the Omega, right? The beginning and the end, Almighty God. These that accomplished great things in faith. It wasn't blind faith. It wasn't leap off a cliff faith. It wasn't jump out into the dark faith, as people like to tell you. You know, I just can't see where you're at, you know. And I go back. I said, let me tell you something. Come here. You can, if you'll allow me to tell you about this Jesus that died on a cross, that rose from the dead, and ascended into heaven for you. And if I can get somebody to believe, put their faith in Jesus, then everything else changes. But if I come and I say, you know what your problem is? You just got to have more faith. And they look at me and they're clueless. They don't know what I'm talking about. Faith in what? They need Jesus first, right? Preach the gospel, and then the Spirit of God moves on them, and by faith, they'll put their trust in Jesus. That's their first experience in faith. Their very first experience in faith. They need Jesus. And if there's not much faith being produced in your life, turn back to the cross. Go back to square one. Put your trust in Jesus each and every day, and your faith you'll be encouraged. I like verse 39. I guess I could say this here in 11. And all these, having obtained a good testimony through faith, did not receive the promise. God having provided something better for us, that they should not be made perfect apart from us. You know what he's saying here? He's listen, God moved. They obtained a good testimony through faith, yet they hadn't received the promise. The promise of his son. Not even just the promise of a holy land. But we have the promise of his son. Things have been fulfilled. You're a New Testament Christian. It should be a lot easier for us to walk in faith than these Old Testament saints. It's a lot easier. It should be a lot easier for you and I to walk in faith than it was for Abraham or for Moses. Now, faith is powerful. It replaces fear, it replaces doubt, it replaces unbelief, and it brings forth healing. Now, doubt. You can go to Matthew's 14. Peter, he steps out of the boat. Right? This is the other story of the storm. He steps into the storm. Why? Because he saw Jesus. He had faith in Jesus. But when he lost sight of Jesus, we could say faith in Jesus. Being overcome by the storm, Peter began to sink, and he was consumed by the storm. Now we know the story. Jesus stretched out his hand, pulled him up. Matthew 14:31. And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him and said to him, "Oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt?" Why do you doubt? The Greek word here for doubt is used only twice in the New Testament. Here in Matthew 14 and in Matthew 28, where it closes out, the last chapter, we get the Great Commission. It says this in Matthew 28, 17 and 18. And when they saw him, they worshiped him, but some doubted. And Jesus came and he spoke to them, saying, "All authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth." Doubt can keep us from God's best. It can keep us from hearing the Lord and keep us from acts of obedience. Then there's unbelief. We see this in Matthew 17, 14 through 21. Let me jump there real quick. Sorry. Matthew 17, almost done. So we have this boy who was healed, and when he had come he had come to the multitude, a man came to him, kneeling down to him and saying, "Lord," look at his term, "Lord, have mercy on my son, for he is an epileptic. He suffers severely, for he often falls into the fire, he often falls into the water. So I brought him to your disciples, but they could not cure him." Then Jesus answered and said, "Oh, faithless and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I bear with you? Bring him here to me." There was a demon in this kid, was the problem. Jesus cast out the demon. He cures the child, the boy, that very hour. And then the disciples turn and come to him privately. Why could we not cast out the demon? 20. So Jesus said to them, because of your unbelief. For assuredly I say to you, if you have faith as a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will be moved, and nothing will be impossible for you. Then he clarifies that they needed to fast and pray, really. Obviously, Jesus didn't fast and pray. He possesses a power greater than the disciples, or you and I. But that was a learning lesson for them. But the idea here is that they doubted. They doubted. Doubt. Doubt is a destructive thing. It keeps us from experiencing God's best, and at times, it keeps others from experiencing God's best. Who wants a pastor full of doubt? I don't want to go to that church. Who wants a church with leaders that are just full of doubt? You know, if anything, I'd rather be following a guy that's a little presumptuous. Just a little, not a lot. You know, I mean, it's truth. You know, I mean, let's test God here. Let's get out of the boat, man. Let's pray for big things. You know, I mean, you know, I'd rather be that guy than doubt, full of doubt. And listen, if I'm sick and I'm in the hospital, if you're full of doubt, you stay out of the room. I'm sorry. I want that Pentecostal brother or sister is going to call fire straight down from heaven and consume whatever sickness I have. That's just me. I'm just, you know, if you're just going to just come in here with this weak, watered down, sad for me, oh, poor Roger, get out of the room. You know, like Jesus, get these guys out so I can raise this young girl back to life. Get those that have doubt, get them out of the room. God, we need to pray. God, remove my doubt. Replace it. My unbelief. God, get it out of here. Get it away from me. And faith brings forth healing. I'm just going to stop. Matthew chapter 9, verse 2, verse 22, verse 29, Matthew 15, 21 through 28. It's all there. I want to give you 4 points as I finish up in Romans 4, 19 through 21 regarding Abraham. I'm going the wrong way. Romans 4:19. Here we go. Slow turner here. If you look here, we pick up. Therefore, 16 says, therefore it is of faith that it might be according to grace, so that the promise might be sure to all the seed, not only to those who are of the law, but also to those who are of faith of Abraham, who is the father of us all. So now Abraham becomes the topic. If you look up here, he gives us 4 points regarding Abraham's life. And he says of Abraham in 19, and not being weak in faith, right? You can write that down. Not being weak in faith, he did not consider his own body already dead. Look at verse 20. And he did not waver at the promise of God through unbelief. That's number 2. Abraham didn't waver. Next, in verse 20, it says, but was strengthened in faith. He strengthened himself in faith. He wasn't weak in faith. He didn't waver in faith at the promises of God. And he strengthened himself in faith. And fourthly, in 21, and being fully convinced. That's faith. He was fully convinced that what he had promised, he was also able to perform. Those are 4 powerful points as an illustration in closing. You can write those down and go back and you can pray and say, God, are those in my life? Am I weak regarding faith? Do I waver at the promises? Am I not strengthening myself in faith? If I've failed the first 3, then the 4th one surely is wrong. You're not going to be fully convinced that he had promised. Faith. Are you convinced that God's got you? The child of God is meant to walk fully convinced. Right? I'm all in. You know, that's it. I remember I had just gotten saved and I went to a motorcycle shop. And I went to the counter, and this lady that had known me since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, you know, I told her, I said, man, I got saved. I gave my life to Jesus Christ. And she was nice, but she says, you know, that's great, Roger. She kind of looks around, making sure nobody was close that could hear me. You know, it was an embarrassment. She said, that's great. She says, just don't get carried away. Just don't take this too far. I looked her straight in the face and said, too late. I drank the Kool-Aid. I am fully convinced. I walked out of there. Woohoo! She walked out going, uh-oh. She wasn't fully convinced. Don't let people bring you down. Don't do that. Lord, thank you for tonight. Thank you for the message, our time of worship, and our time of prayer. Strengthen us, God. Strengthen us in faith, God. May we be unmovable and abounding in the work and promises of Jesus. Amen.